Let's just talk about how today's going to be structured. So the first part is closing is going to be reframed as a series of questions, basically. We're not going to be using the word closing very much. The second thing is I'm looking at talking how you can speed up the sales cycle, because at the end of the day, with all best intentions, you can do everything right in the sales process and do everything I'm suggesting you do. But reality is that you do sometimes just need to, speed it up. So we're going to do a bit of a session on that. And then the final piece is probably my favorite, is actually just hacks and tips. So if you take anything away with you today, the final section is very much 20 years nearly of in a sales and sales leadership role. And what I've found is, I would say, a more palatable way to get your clients to do what you want them to do, as opposed to being too aggressive or too kind of what we would see as kind of closing business. So I really hope you enjoyed today. We've got 3 sections for Q&A. So I'm really hoping that you can put your Q&A into the chat. Rachel, if you can send it direct to Rachel, that would be great. But if you want to send it to the group, that's also cool. Rach can collate that as well. And if you have a burning desire to talk or ask a question, then feel free to jump in. All good. Can have some water when you ask questions. All right, so we're going to start by talking about closing. So love to read the room with you guys. When someone says closing to you, or when you signed up for this Lunch and Learn, what was the first word that came to your mind when someone said closing? So you can just pop it in the chat in terms of what comes to mind when I say closing. What's the first word that comes to mind? Finalizing, yep. Contract signed, yep. Cool, yep. Client says go. Great. And can you tell me what emotion comes to mind when you're thinking about closing? So whether it's a good emotion, whether it's you're worried about closing, you don't know how, and that's how it makes you feel, or what's kind of your thoughts and emotional state? Yeah, excitement. Great. Perfect. Anxious. Yes, Nat, I get that. Yeah, trepidation, relief after the struggle. Yeah, great. Yeah, look, thanks so much for being honest. The people that said excitement and didn't say any other emotion, you're in this 15% of salespeople, and then the other 85% are in basically everyone else. Most people will feel quite anxious about when they're closing deals, especially if they're not in a sales related role, if they're in an account manager type role. So as you guys know, one of my absolute missions is to change the way people view sales. So we're going to start by looking at, we're going to reframe closing, so that regardless of whether you love it or whether you just want some help with it, we're going to actually look at how closing actually becomes questioning. So inherently in a sort of a client relationship situation where you're looking to close business, you hear the term, and I hate it, is ABC, always be closing. I hate it, but I have to say it's been around forever, and it will be around forever. I don't like it because closing just can be quite an aggressive term. It actually came from accountancy, and it came from the closing off the books. So that's where it came from. So what I'm saying now is that it should be ABC, always be questioning. So let's just take a deal situation from a meaningful conversation all the way through to the deal is done. Some of you guys will have a sales cycle of 2 months, 2 weeks, 18 months, it doesn't matter. But look, this is a really rough kind of sales cycle. So inherently, we start closing around here because we're identifying the problem at the start. We're then kind of getting into admin, pricing, proposal mode in the middle, and then we want to get the deal done when we're over here. I'm suggesting that that's rubbish, and I don't believe that that is a good sales process at all. The sales process really is about questioning throughout the whole entire life cycle, even from the start. So some of you may be thinking, well, that's all very well, but I'm not, you know, in a position where I know what to ask, or how do you possibly even look at that? That's totally okay. So I'm all about practical examples. So I just want to share an example that I had just yesterday. So I'm promoting my sales training predominantly for entrepreneurs and salespeople. I was speaking to an amazing entrepreneurial funding a funding house that basically funds entrepreneurs. I mean, it's a venture capitalist ultimately. And I was speaking to the community manager there for the first time. And so essentially, I want her to promote my products on to her entrepreneurs. So she would be like an aggregator for me. Didn't know her from Adam, but it was absolutely a meaningful conversation. So how I started and how I closed from the start, and I want to give you a practical example of this. So at that first point of meaningful conversation, I asked her probably about 7 or 8 questions that were what you would know as closing questions, but they weren't at the end of the process, and they certainly weren't in a way that I believe she felt that she was being closed. Because one thing I probably should have said from the start, the science behind traditional closing, which is kind of, there's about 17 different closes. You've got buy now or it won't happen again, like, you know, that kind of the sale stops. You've got closing like, you know, assumption closing, and you've got another 14, 15 of them. But what I'm going to show you is the questions that I asked her and why they are closing questions. So I really hope that you get some really practical examples of this. So I asked her, which would be preferable in terms of product point of view? Would it be individual sales training, or would it be sales advisory? I then went on to ask her, what are the key problems of your portfolio companies facing when it comes to business selling? What steps have you taken to support them? I've also asked, when we work together, I cannot wait to see the methodology used to build community, blah, 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 blah. So I'm not going to read them out because we're going to go through them now. So if I just share my screen again. So this is the first question I asked. All right, so which would be preferable from a product point of view? Okay, so most of you will probably identify that this is an old school kind of optional close. So what I'm doing there is I'm saying, okay, which would be better, A or B? I'm not actually giving her C, D, or E, or I'm not actually opening it too wide to say what would be of benefit. I'm actually saying, which would you prefer? So back in the day, that would be considered to be an optional close. Pick A or B. You'll notice the language here. The language is, the key word is preferable. So that is the key word in what I believe is the future of selling and the future of closing is actually in the language. So that was my first question to her. And of course, she answered the question, no problem. So the second one was, what are the key problems your portfolio companies are facing when it comes to business selling, and how have you supported them? So this is of course, all these questions are genuine questions. I'm not trying to close the deal, but I want to know what I'm dealing with from the start, because I want to know if I want to speak to this person again. Do I spend my time on this person? If the problems that they're facing, and interestingly, one of the problems she did tell me she was facing, I can't help it. So I wanted to know that. But what I did here is I put another question in there, which is effectively a scarcity question. And it's super, I don't believe many people would feel kind of, you know, sold to. People don't like to be sold to, they want to buy, right? They want to buy from you, they don't want to be sold to. So for me, what steps have you taken to support your community is a genuine question to understand, have I got competitors? What have you done and how effective it's going to be? But what I am also doing is ensuring that if she hasn't, if at this stage she hasn't supported her community, that she feels, I'm going to say the pain, because that's kind of when you buy things, you're either in pain or you go towards gain, right? But it's almost kind of highlighting what have you done, but in a much softer and more palatable way. And interestingly, she had told me some amazing things she'd done, but also she recognized that she needed to do more. And so that was a really great opening for me to talk a little bit, well, actually listen, ask more questions actually. But ultimately it was a recognition that she, actually, you know what, I hadn't thought about this, I need to do more and support my entrepreneurs and my business owners in training in sales. So the third one was, it's the old school assumptive. I try and work myself with this, just talking about I'm going to be touching 1 million people in 5 years, trying to reshape their view on sales. It's kind of that assumptive language. Most of you would have done some extra reading on positivity and things like this. It's really, really powerful. When we work together, I believe you should assume that if you're spending your precious time in a meeting with a client, that you will assume that you will work together. And the only reason you won't work together is because if it's not a fit. And so language is powerful. So when we work together, I can't wait to see your methodology and how you've used it to build community. So it's not when we work together, will you pay me on time, or, you know, something aggressive. It's actually saying, hey, when we work together, I will see you again. When we work together, I want to learn from you. You know, I really can't wait to learn from you. And it's really powerful, because if you get your head around that assumptive language with this relationship early on, it can really set you up for success. The other one is, who else should I be connected to within the business or community that would love what I'm doing? You're basically saying, I love what I'm doing, you love what I'm doing, and I'm doing amazing things. But you're actually saying, hey, who else do I need to speak to? That's actually super powerful when you get to the end of the sales cycle. And so I'm sure some of you have got through this. You get to the end of the sales cycle and you spent a couple of months on this, big ticket mandates, let's just say. And then your contact goes cold or kicks the can down the road and you can't get an answer. If you don't, at the early stages, close the business, i.e. question enough, you actually don't know who to not just escalate to, because that in itself isn't always smart to do, but you actually don't know anyone else in the business. The other thing is that all of the data around account management suggests that even an outstanding account manager will only ever know 70% about that business and who to speak to. And so it's changing all the time and we're always blindsided. So who else should I speak to in the business? Getting those names really, really early is critical, because if you get them too close to the end, your contact can get quite offended. So why would you speak to anyone else but me? You know, the key thing with this point though is that this person turned around to me and said, oh, you should speak to so and so and so and so. And back in the day, I would have been so grateful. I would have been like, oh, great, you know, thank you so much. But I'm a bit sort of more mature now when it comes to these things. I said, sorry, can you spell that for me? So I got the name fully correctly and I got them up on LinkedIn straight away. So I was like, I did, you know, the amount of times I've written a name down and I can't read my writing, I've got the name spelled wrong. The other thing is I didn't stop at 2. I refused to stop at 2. So I kept her giving me. So I got 7 in the end. Some of you will think that that's overkill. I get that. I got 7 names. I didn't burn the relationship. I just said to her, and what about, and what about, and what about, and what about? I didn't say, and who else, and who else. I just said, so how does that work? So you reporting to her, him, what? So who's that? And just lots of questions. So if you do get the 2 names that you want, and inside you're thinking to yourself, woohoo, just stop and kind of go, actually, I want 4. And look, some people will give loads of names and other people won't, but just keep that in mind. And the final one, which is still a closing question, and I'm going to explain why, is how can I assist your community efforts? So we all know people buy from people. We all know people buy from people they like and trust and have integrity. And I'm not even going to go there with that, because I know you guys know that. This is about giving to close. Given to receive. And so this wasn't just and this wasn't an empty question. I had already prepared for the call, and I mentioned, how can I assist you? And I had ideas, so I wasn't just expecting them to come up with the, you know, with their ideas. She turned around and said, I've had zero sleep and I've got a, you know, blah 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 blah, and I'm really struggling. I said, well, I've got some ideas. What about this? What about this? Would this help? Would this help? No, that wouldn't help. That would help. And interestingly, as the conversation flowed, she mentioned something that I don't believe would have been brought up if I hadn't have mentioned that question. So that was also in itself closing the whole relationship. And there's no doubt in my mind that we will work together if it suits us both. All right. I need a glass of water now. So I'm just going to actually I might just go for some questions now, if that's okay. I've got some that I've just seen popped through, I think. Yeah, there you go. Can I just ask if anyone has any questions about that first section, which is the reframing, closing into questioning? Just maybe put your hand up virtually if you'd like to, or just in the chat. Oh, Natalie. Oh, you're just on mute.
Hey, Vic, really helpful tips and questions. I was just wondering, when you start up the conversation, do you actually tell the other person that's the agenda? You're going to, you know, start off with a bunch of questions about them, or like, how do you structure it in a way that you'll get through all these questions to the end and at the same time kind of not necessarily, make the other person feel like, they don't have any control over what gets covered?
Yeah, good question. So I don't think I'm as structured as you sound like you are, in terms of I've got my 5 questions and I was going to get them out hell or high water, they were going to come out. But I do find I try and steer the conversation in those ways, and that serves me. I do set agendas always, because meetings should always have an agenda, but I don't often reference questions like that. What I tend to do, however, is I will always set expectations on what I want from the meeting and what I expect a relationship would kind of look like. Even with quite new meetings, I talk about how it's really important that myself and my business work with people that have aligned values, and that we have open communication and honesty and things like that. They're my boundary setting and expectations. When I have I've had some meetings railroaded, like so railroaded, and I have, with all intents and purposes, tried to get them back on track, but they want to talk about their sister's wedding and that the dress doesn't fit. And oh my goodness, I have to go through the whole thing, even though I tried to bring that back. What I have done previously in the past is I have done one of 2 things. I've actually said, hey, I know this is obviously a time for you. I just need to, can we extend the meeting by another 20 minutes so we can just talk through some business stuff? Or I just need a bit more time to understand. Is that okay? And they would check their diary and say yes or no. If they say no, then I will often reschedule the meeting there and then. Hey, can we catch up this time next week? I just need half an hour. Sort of your time. I don't know what your hourly rate is, Natalie, but I know mine. And so for me, if I'm not getting those questions out and the meeting has gone off on different tangents, then I will either cram a couple in at the end, which aren't great, or I do try and extend the meeting. So the answer to your question is no, I don't set it up talking about questions, but I don't think that means you can't, though.
Cool, thanks.
Any other questions on that one? We've got one in the chat here. Sorry, Jorge, could you explain that question to me? So I can't. Did you feel closed? Could you explain it to me?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you had that conversation with a community manager, and
Yes.
was your intention always to, I guess, close, and if you did close, sort of what were the signals that gave you that indicated closure?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's a very thoughtful question. I think a lot of my sales stuff is intuitive, so I don't think I gave it too much thought in terms of did I feel closed? Did I feel like it was a good use of time? And did I feel like there was actionable next steps on both of our sides? Yes. Did I get her to agree to come back to me within a timely manner? Yes. Did I feel that my hourly rate was paid for? Yes. When I haven't felt that way, you know what, that example about the whole wedding thing, the sister's wedding thing, I felt so incomplete after that. I felt so almost annoyed with myself that I let it go that long. I kid you not. We were literally sitting there in a coffee shop in Melbourne for 45 minutes talking about a dress. And I mean, I love talking about dresses. I love I love shooting the shit. But I felt a bit cross in the end with myself. I think for me, I'm very disciplined about the objectives from the communication. So I'm such a relationship person. Anyone that's known me for 2 minutes, I'm really relationship based. But I don't believe that someone should railroad a meeting and that you should stay on point as much as possible and have actionable, measurable things to come out the end of it with. Hope that answers the question in the spirit of what you wanted. Okay, all right. Okay, cool. Right, we're just going to run. I'm just going to go on to a quick survey now. So I did just mention that I'd really like to get some feedback from you, and I know that you guys are busy. So rather than do it right at the end when you need to go, I'd really like to understand if you were to pay for, and it's probably going to be a nominal fee, but pay for a masterclass in selling and sales techniques, what are the subjects that you would basically put your hand in your pocket or your pocket for your team would be? So I'm just going to, Rachel's just going to put the link for the survey in here. And if you could just do that now, that would be great. And then just give us a tick or just say it's done in the chat when you're finished. All right, lovely. Awesome. Thank you guys. Really appreciate your feedback. That's my only ask for today. So thank you. So the second section is on speeding up the sales. So this is basically, it's all very well, Victoria, talking to us about questioning is not closing. It's all just about, you know, doing things in the correct way in terms of sales. But say, for instance, you just haven't done that and it's hard to change you or your team. I just want to give you some quick wins to just get the deals in the door and get kind of shit done. So I want to just talk about an example. So I had a sales call from a sales vendor just the other day. The vendor supplies one of my businesses with, we pay them a lot of money and they're basically wanting to get our business. Sorry, we pay one of their competitors money and they want to get our business. So it's a vendor supplier. And the person called. I always am nice to people that call me out of the blue from a cold call point of view because we've all been there. And he said a couple of things and asked a couple of questions, and it was all very well. But he did 2 or 3 things gravely wrong, in my opinion. He tried to close me in a traditional way. And this is why I'm trying to move away from traditional and look at future selling techniques. He said to me, Victoria, so just a bit of feedback. So I told him I was on sabbatical, and I told him I wouldn't be in a position to change vendors until the end of the year, and that I was back late September. So important information. And I told him this, right? We're on the phone for like 10 minutes. And so he said to me, Victoria, I need to, he kept saying I quite a lot, which was kind of a schoolboy error, but he said, I need to get, if you want to change vendors by the end of the year, we need to get you in the pipeline of work by September. So let's put a diary in, and I'll demo our product mid-September. Is that okay? Or he didn't even say that. Is that okay? And I said, well, I was like, well, I'm not back from sabbatical, and I don't mind that it's not going to get in your pipeline. I'll just wait. If it's right, it's right. I'll just wait. And he carried on a few times. The grave error that he made is that he didn't listen. I was on sabbatical to the end of September. That was the first error. And he wants me to go on a bloody tech demo 2 weeks before I come back. Don't think so. I'm going to be in Bali, love. And the second thing is not, I've not spoken to him before, and he was trying to close me super early. I hadn't decided that I wanted to move to his product at that stage. And just overall, I think the not listening was the killer, right? But just actually just trying to put a diary entry in my diary. So lo and behold, his colleague called me about, so this was, he would have called a couple of months ago, and his colleague called me a couple of weeks ago, and still on sabbatical. And he said, hey, I understand you're on sabbatical at the moment. You used to talk to my colleague, but I've taken over his role. We'd really like to talk to you. How can we do that? I was like, okay, kind of like this. He said, well, and he asked me lots of questions. He said, hey, I'm going to put a diary entry in your diary. I'm sitting there thinking, are you shitting me? Are you literally got a script? And he said, but can you do me, like, I'm going to put it in because I know you're really busy, but if it doesn't work for you, just move me around. And look, I'll put it in for mid-October because I know that you're going to be busy when you get back, and just move me around. I was like, okay, I will. And it was just so different. It was such a different experience. And yes, of course, you could say the person listened more, and you could say all of that relational stuff, but a closing technique is to put something in someone's diary. But the difference is the salesperson B gave me the option to move it around. He still got what he wanted. He still got a diary entry in my diary. I'm going to move it. I'm going to cancel it. I'm going to do whatever I want with it. But the odds are I might keep it. So different. So I just wanted to give you that example. So now to go into practical examples for you guys. So I've got 3 examples. The first example is about a proposal, and perhaps where you've sent a proposal to a client, and they're kicking the can down the road, they've suddenly ghosted you, and they've gone from the world, and you just don't know where they are. The second one is going to be on where you've had multiple meetings and at multiple different points, and nothing has closed, and literally more action points, more things for you to do. And the final one is when the rubber hits the road and you need money in the door, is what you do to close in more of a futuristic way rather than old traditional stuff. All right, so the first one, proposal. So you've got a proposal out there. You've done everything right. So you've got all your questions, and you've done everything correctly. The proposal is amazing. You haven't spent too much time on it. You've got the deal done before the proposal really was sent, type thing, done everything right. And then they ghost you. So there's 3 ways that you can change this. So the first way is you contact them about something totally different, genuinely different. So you send them a text message, you send them an email. Use a different channel of communication. Do not send them an email if you've been emailing the whole time about a proposal, because they will get your email, they won't open it, they will assume you're chasing a proposal. Has anyone, please just give me a bit of feedback on this. Has anyone had a piece of work out there for a significant piece of time and their client has completely ghosted them and you're just kind of left hanging? Can you just put your hand up for me? Just want to get a sense of the room. Okay, great. It's superb. Look, it's super common, and even I believe that, you know, me and my team are so bloody good at this, but we get it too. So the first thing is, using a different channel, you ask them something different. So you ask them, I don't know, about something else. And then what you do is, when you do get them on the phone or you do get that interaction with them, you can ask them at the very end of the phone call, hey, I know I don't want to talk about the proposal because there's obviously something going on, but can you just let me know, like, is there any update you can give me? As long as you talk to them about something else that is authentic. I've done a few in the past where I've asked their opinion. If I know that they've got interest or expertise in a different area, I will often have some kind of crisis I'm needing to deal with in my life or businesses that I will ask them their advice for. So the second thing you can do, and I absolutely think that nothing should go out with an expiry unless there's an expiry date on these type of things, is that ensure that if they're kicking the can down the road proposal and for whatever reason, and it's often not personal, that they're messing you around because it's not important anymore, then an expiry date on the proposal is really important. So that's a 101 no-brainer. But actually emailing them or whatever channel you normally use and say, hey, I just want to let you know we can no longer offer you that going forward. It's not about closing the deal here. We're just saying, you know, we can't do this anymore. Like, how can we do this anymore? We can't do it anymore because of these reasons. And those reasons can be, you know, pricing changes, resourcing problems, God knows what, whatever, genuine reason. And so let us know if you want us to redo. So it's a bold move. You could say the pricing will change in 2 weeks' time, but that is that going back to the old school now or never, where people don't respond very well to. You're just saying, hey, it has expired, because obviously you've put an expiry date on it, haven't you? It has expired, just to let you know. Let us know if you want to redo the proposal. And you bloody know that they're going to get a messing around levy on their next proposal. So I don't know about you guys, but I have certain clients that have like a piss me around levy. So like 30%, 40% extra, because I know they're going to mess around. And the final one is, and you could absolutely do this, providing you have contacts in other parts of their business, that you contact them and kind of get a softer sense of how the proposal's going. So that's the first one. So the second one is multiple meetings. So you've had multiple meetings and you're perhaps not very seasoned in the selling process, and you've always been an amazing account manager, and you've suddenly moved into this, and you're having these perfect meetings that you're all gathering information, your requirements, the problems and all the rest of it. But you're actually getting to no money has been exchanged or no deal, effectively has been done. So the first thing I think you should do is have a very, very direct conversation with that person, preferably in a meeting, because you've had 100 already, and say, hey, we can't, there's no more, there's no more time. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but really you're thinking, stop wasting my time. Are we going to work together or not? It's direct, it's bold, it's necessary. People respect boundaries, right? The second thing is you just exit that. And I don't mean for you to just let them go into the ether. I actually mean that you purposely exit that situation. You send them a note. Ideally, you phone them and you say, hey, I just want to let you know, we've been talking. It's been super, super good. You know, I know we really want to work together, but it doesn't sound like it's the right time. So you just let me know. It's over to you. Because these kind of time wasters just juice all of your profit. They just juice everything from you. And so exiting them quickly is worth doing. The final one is it's really the expiry date again, and actually saying that we have a resourcing, perhaps we have a resourcing sort of situation here. So can we have one final meeting, but then after that, we're going to need to do this or exit. So the third one is need to get money ASAP, like literally, let's get some revenue. The rubber has hit the road. So the first thing you do is you set expectations with the client. You're honest with them, not necessarily if it really is like, you know, really bad time for you in financially, but you explain to them, I want to do business with you, but we have to do it in 2 weeks because I have a resourcing challenge. And if we don't get into it, you can't do it. And it takes 2 weeks. And if you feel that that isn't doable because of your end, let's not talk. It literally is set expectations. That is a bit brutal, I know, to some of you, but it's really powerful when you say to them, you don't just say, you either work with me in 2 weeks or you don't work with me. You just say, we need to do it in 2 weeks because of X, Y, and Z. And also, it's really important that the X, Y, and Z makes sense. So at the moment, you know, I recently had a reno and someone said to me, you can't get the joiner. And I was like, well, why? And it was like, well, because of the products from overseas. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Can't get the joiner. So we waited 3 times as long for the reno because, you know, because it made sense, because it was real. Some of this stuff is important to talk about: resourcing challenges, rate rises, sickness, you know, whatever you need to talk about. It is important to be real when you explain the expectations. The second one is, with this type of thing, when you need to really up your game. So if any of you have performance managed salespeople, and where you sit there and say to them, activity, it is true. And yes, of course, there's quality activity and shit activity, and I get that. But the reality is the more you have in the top of your funnel, the more will close, the more you will get the deal done. So it is focused 100% on activity. The final one, which I hate telling you about because I hate doing it, but I think you need to know, is that if you need to get deals in the door, you just structure your pricing accordingly. So, and I'm not saying you drop your pants, but what I'm saying is you structure it and you tier it, or you can tier it in a timeline, or you can do something that will incentivize a quick deal. And that's super powerful. Can you imagine if you can take your sales cycle from 12 weeks to even 10 weeks? So you're basically getting, you know, about 8% increase in your revenue, or you're getting the same revenue for 8% less time just by clipping your ticket by 1%. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Those maths really add up. All right, so let's have some questions, just conscious of time, before we go into some hacks and tips and tricks and stuff. Questions we got here on the chat. Anyone would like to ask a live question? Doesn't matter if you don't want to, it's all good. All right, so I've got one here saying, I'm in a client-facing role, but as an account manager without much experience of sales, what advice do you have for me to start questioning differently? Love it. Great question. That is the next section. So we are going to go into some small question changes that you can make just to kind of start questioning and closing early. The second question is, how many times should I follow up proposals, quotes? I don't know if a proposal or a quote should ever really go down, go down into the ether forever and ever. I do believe in exiting quotes and expiry dates very much, as you've heard. I think the reality is that if you're talking about a big ticket deal in an institutional enterprise client, then, at the end of the day, the average sales cycle you should know already. And then in terms of following up, I would hope that you would have had a structured kind of timeline of follow-up with your client already. Here's the final proposal. You book in the next meeting at that point. So that's the key thing with proposals. Here's the final proposal. The next meeting is in 2 weeks. That's really critical for enterprise sales, really critical. And then it gets to a point with proposals and quotes where you're just literally like, I cannot do this anymore. You've tried all my tactics of speaking to the client about something different people in the business, having hard conversations. The quote doesn't go anywhere, but what we do is we either keep it, we either delegate it. We either keep it, we delegate it, or we automate it. So we keep it. So we keep it because it's a $1 million deal and it is big ticket. You have to keep it. You delegate it to someone to follow up every 4 weeks and just is someone that you trust can follow up. Or you automate it, which basically means you automate it in your CRM for that person to get a follow-up every, 4 months at that stage. It really just depends. But that proposal shouldn't die forever, because that proposal you've taken time to write, I hope, and you've got some buy-in. You wouldn't write a proposal with someone that doesn't really want to do business with you, really, because if you do, well, that's a whole different sort of story. So I believe in keeping, delegating or automating. Lucinda, with the ghosting, how hard do you chase people down to have a proper close out the relationship? Yeah. Depends on how important the relationship is. I go pretty hard because I want to understand and learn if there's been something that has gone amiss in the process. But I would suggest about 20% of the people that I've interacted with over the years, I've got about an 80-20 kind of conversion. And I would suggest that I won't get closure on, out of the 20% I haven't done business with, I probably will never, ever get closure on the relationship of about 5% of that. So 5% of all the relationships. And it's just that likability thing, isn't it? It's like, I could have rolled my eyes at something and they were like dead to me, I don't know. But yes, so I do go pretty hard. But I do find, I don't know how you find this, but I do find that if I don't really get them and there isn't that chemistry, they don't get me either. And so I'll chase it if I felt that chemistry and it was values aligned, the price was right, and it was almost like, what happened? I got ghosted by someone that I thought we were really compatible. I'll chase that because I want to know, but I don't chase as much the ones where I didn't get that compatibility feeling from.
Vic, I've got a verbal question for
you.
Yeah, please. In terms of two different scenarios, one being completely cold relationships, a zero relationship, through to one where you've got a relationship, over what period of time, in your experience, does it take to close a deal from sort of inception to closing that deal? How many touch points do you think you need to have? And I suppose the example again is, we've already got that existing relationship, has it been 12 to 18 months of regular contact? And then where it's an initial conversation from inception, how many touch points to completion in your experience, would you say?
Yeah, so the top 20%, if you look at it at like a percentage, regardless of how much you've spoken to this person, 20% of the work you're going to do, the deals you're going to do on people that you don't know very well, people that you don't have those 7 points of touch point where I'll talk to you about in a minute. You are there at the right time, the right place, and the right product. We talk about lucky, we talk about being lucky, right time, right place. It's about 20%. Because remember, people buy when they have a need, they're in pain, or they go after such gain that they purchase. So that So it's about 20%. So it doesn't matter if that's your first phone call to them. And obviously there has to be, you have to be credible, and you have to, have the right product, and, you can't just, anyone can't just do it. But let's just say that you do, it's about 20% of the time. Then you've got the big fat part in the middle, which is the 60%. And then you've got the 20% at the bottom. The 20% at the bottom will never, ever give you money. Ever. Ever. You could speak to them for 10 years. I have someone that I've spoken to for 10 years. I take him out for lunch every year at Christmas, have done for 10 years. He's in the 20%. Why do I do that? Because he's a sneezer. He loves my business. He tells everyone about my business. I have never made any money from him. And he's a nice example of that bottom 20%. Unfortunately, there's a lot of time wasters in that bottom 20%. There's a lot of time wasters. And of course, you don't always know they're going to waste your time too early. And the quicker you find out, the better. But they get put in the 20%. The 60% in the middle, the fat part, which is a diamond. Think about it like a diamond. The beautiful fat part of the diamond, shouldn't use the word fat, it's quite derogatory, but you know what I mean, the big part of the diamond is that is notoriously, people say up to 12 touch points, but it's so industry specific. So if you're talking about $1 million deal and you're talking about an enterprise sale, you're talking about an 18-month process on average, and you would need 130 touch points. Like, there's just no way you would do that in 12. If you're talking about a $5,000 product deal that potentially, you need some touch points, you sales call them, you meet them, you invite them to some educational things, and you do a couple of other things, 5, 10, 15, 20, then yeah, you're talking about 10 to 12, and then you've got all the rest in the middle. I guess the key thing is that it's automating the follow-up if they are in that bottom part of the diamond. So, really understand in a quality first call, quality first meeting, to really understand the propensity that you can work together. You won't know until probably 3 meetings in. Well, you should know pretty early. Are they the decision maker? Do they have money? Are they in pain? I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. But it's actually about the second and third meeting. You'll get a sense of that time wasty thing, and then that's when you keep them. If you want to keep them, you delegate them to someone else, or you just pop them in the bottom, which is effectively that kind of once a year or a mail out type thing. Awesome. Cool. So one of the masterclasses that I've been asked to do, which has been pretty unanimous, is actually fill in the top of the funnel. So this is going to be an hour long, fill in the top of the funnel. This is obviously business to business. And so just maybe just pop something in the chat to Rachel if you're interested in getting the early bird on that. Just maybe just put your thumb up, or just go, yes, me please. Because that's going to be the next one. And that's just because I've just got so much feedback that people need that. Awesome. So I'll let you pop that in the chat. Now we're going to go tips and hacks. My favorite part. So tips and hacks. Let's talk about language. So I had an interesting conversation with my son on the way to school this morning when he kept using the word fart. And I kept saying to him, I don't like that word. And I kept trying to explain to him language is important. So we now say pop off. And every time it says fart, it loses a sweet. So language is super, super important. Using the right language with sales is super important. So I prefer softer language because I'm quite a direct person anyway. So I've sort of had to soften myself over the years. So using can I ask, how do you manage, please explain, that type of thing, so valuable. So for instance, I would say, can I ask who holds the budget? Because I really want to know who holds the P&L, right? I don't care about the delegate. I want to know who has got the money, who's going to sign my check. So can I ask who's got the P&L, who holds the P&L, is a lot nicer than who's got the P&L. It's like, well, that's quite, it's quite aggressive. I think have I missed something? How about is very much like, have I missed something? How about this? Should we talk about this? Is a genuine kind of have I missed something? Because I often do, but it is kind of giving them more of the chance. How about, and the how about is what I really want to talk about as well. Definite next steps. So Jorge asked the question earlier about closing, and did I feel closed? And you know, did the deal wasn't done, but did I close? So I think without definite next steps have agreed, and this shouldn't be you, by the way. So definite next steps is not about you having 3 more things on your to-do list. It's about your client, potential client, doing stuff as well. Because if the conversation has gone as it probably should, you're giving something to them too, or you're providing them some kind of value too, or they need something from you too. So you won't hear me say to a client, I will get back to you on that, unless I say to them, can you get back to me on that? And they will say, will you send me an email first and then I reply? No. So definite next steps is really important to get the client to buy into the fact that they've agreed to do something. And that just sets the expectation of the relationship up as well, because there's been so much. They will just tell you about a book that they really recommended, and you just say, oh, send me the email about the book. 80% of the time, they're not going to do that, by the way, but it's not the point. The point is you've set that conversation up for definitive next steps. So if I don't hear from you, I'm going to call you next week. You know, when can you have that back to me? Because I'd like to know. Or you can always say, can I ask when you're going to have that back to me, if you feel that that's a bit softer. And then you can talk about, hey, I'm away, but will you get that back to me after this? And definitive next steps. So the final section on this is 3 pieces. We've got just one last thing, workload and resourcing, and the expiry date. I've spoken quite a lot about the expiry date, so I don't really want to rehash too much. But one of the people that I trained back 8 years ago, one of my favorite associates really was. She was incredible. She was a chartered accountant, very smart, was not salesy at all or anything like that. And so she wasn't the typical mold, perfect, because I hate that typical mold, right? She was absolutely perfect, but she had no success, like 0. And I just couldn't work it out. And I'd go on meetings with her and she did everything right. And I was like, shit, what is going on? And I just honestly really bothered me. Anyway, I tried something I learned years ago back in the UK, which was just at the end of a meeting, you've got to the point where you're like, we've been talking about your sister's wedding dress for, the bridesmaid's dress for 45 minutes, and you literally need to go because you just go to another meeting. You use the tactic of just one last thing. So, hey, just one last thing. Can you, can we, can I ask, or something? So I gave it to her. Her name's Nicole. And I gave it to her and said, honey, just try this. And it was just a game changer for her. And I think what it was, because she was so smart, big brain, just beautiful, and just was really concerned with a lot of the sales training that we were having at that point. She just didn't sit right with her. But by the end of it, she'd just say, just right at the end, oh, just one last thing. And she'd just get her one thing. And she was super comfortable to do that. And it was a game changer for her. She now runs her own business and she's doing incredibly well. But just doing that in itself was pretty game changing for her, because authentically, she didn't feel authentic with some of the tactics that I use. But that was really powerful for her. So I do that a fair bit as well, because it's kind of entrenched on me. Often because I've forgotten, not because it's a sales tactic, but often I've got distracted. So sharing your workload and resourcing challenge, I mean, that is, an obvious one. Sharing with the client why you can't deliver on something, why they need to get a move on. And the big one's the expiry. It's easy, it's simple. Ensuring that the client knows, whether it's physically on an agreement, or whether you run a sales team of 10 people and you change one thing after today, then I'd love it to be put in an expiry, because it gives the sales people a new opportunity to speak, to to speak to the client again and reposition. All right. There we go. Oh, just 1 minute after. Now, thank you so much for your time and attention. I've received lots of other direct messages, so I will get back to you on those directly. Look, on the YouTube channel, it's just at Evolve Sales Training. Heaps of videos on there. So if you want to share it with your team, just loads of content, 5 minutes, really a bit like me, very raw and kind of authentic when it comes to sales. So hoping you can visit the YouTube channel, and I hope to see you again. All right, see you guys. Have a great day. Bye now. Bye.